If you're thinking about buying a DJI Avata 360 or an Antigravity A1, there's something that no one is telling you, and it completely changes what you're buying. And if you're already thinking about buying one of these, you might want to hold off for a minute, because what I'm about to show you could save you a lot of frustration and a lot of money. So let's start with the big one, and this is where a lot of people get misled straight away. It's the whole 8K footage thing. 8K sounds fantastic, doesn't it? I've watched 4K footage and it's absolutely fantastic. 8K is going to be twice as good as that, yeah? No. Here's what the numbers don't tell you. A 360 camera isn't shooting a normal frame like a standard camera. It's capturing an entire sphere all around the camera, if it's on a drone or if it's not on a drone. It's capturing everything in every direction, not just the bit that your viewer is actually going to be watching, which means that the 360 degree footage, 8K footage, is being spread over that entire sphere. And here's a catch. When you come to edit your video, you're not showing that entire sphere all at the one time. You're reframing. You're basically cropping a section of that 8K video to show on the screen. And that section that you cut is no longer 8K, because the entire thing is 8K, not that little section that you have cut for your viewer to watch. In reality, that 8K footage often ends up looking more like 1080p footage, or even worse sometimes. That's the part that no one's telling you. Because on paper it looks fantastic, 8K resolution, yeah? But in practice, you're throwing most of that 8K away because that's not the part that you have cut to show on your screen. And it gets worse, because if you zoom in, or if you reframe aggressively, or if you stabilise heavily, then you're degrading that image even further. So what you end up with is footage that looks a lot softer than footage that comes from a standard 4K camera. That's the trade-off. 360 degree gives you the total freedom to choose the angle that you put on your screen after the fact, but you pay for that freedom with a real visible loss in detail. And if you don't understand that before you buy, you're going to be very disappointed as soon as you start editing. And if you've just spent a lot of money expecting sharp cinematic footage, that's a pretty frustrating place to end up. Now let's talk about what happens when the light drops, because this is where 360 footage falls apart fast. With a normal camera, you've got a decent sized sensor focused on what you're looking at. With a 360 camera, that sensor is split across two lenses covering everything. And those sensors are small, so straight away you're at a disadvantage in low light. Now add in the fact that the camera is doing some really heavy processing. It's stitching, stabilising, compressing, and what you end up with is noise, smearing, and a noticeable loss in detail. Now, it may look okay on a very small screen, but once you bring it into your editor, and even worse, once you export it, you'll see it properly. Fine detail has disappeared, textures have turned mushy, and dark areas break apart. You can try to fix it, but if you boost the exposure, you're just going to introduce more noise. If you reduce the noise, you're going to get a softer image. And if you add sharpening, it's going to look artificial and crunchy. There's no clean recovery. So those nice cinematic conditions that you've been used to getting when you go out at sunrise or dusk with your drone, with your 4K camera, are not going to be available to you with a 360 camera, because that's where 360 degree footage struggles the most. In good daylight, it can look decent, but outside of that, the quality drops quickly. So all those cinematic shots that you're imagining in real world conditions, you just might not get them. And this isn't obvious when you're watching polished clips that have been produced by skilled editors with high-performing equipment and shown you online to convince you to go and spend your hard-earned money on this fantastic 8K drone, 8K camera on a drone. Because once you're working with that footage yourself, you'll realise just how limiting it is. It's another trade-off. You get the full coverage of the screen, but you lose reliability as soon as the lighting isn't optimal. Here's one that can catch a lot of people off guard because you don't always see it until it's too late to do anything about it. A 360-degree camera isn't one camera. It's two lenses filming in opposite directions at the same time. And to create a seamless 360-degree image, the footage from those two lenses has to be stitched together. Most of the time, it looks fine, until it doesn't. Because anything that crosses that stitch line, and if you're flying a drone with a 360 camera, it can be a river, a wall, a building, vehicles, a road, a railway line, people. These objects can become warped, split, or distorted. You'll see things like objects that are bending unnaturally. Subjects might get cut in half and badly rejoined. They don't actually line up where the cut is. There could be ghosting or double images. And once it's baked into the footage, that's it. You can't fix the stitching in post. And the real problem is that while you're filming, you don't actually know exactly where that stitch line is going to land in your final shot, especially when you start reframing later on in post. So you can think that you've captured a great moment, but you bring it into the edit and realise that the most important part of your shot sits right across a seam and your shot is now unusable. Now, that's not a minor annoyance, that's a lost shot. And if that was the one shot that you needed for your video, you don't get it back. Again, it's a trade-off. You're capturing everything around you, but you're also introducing a failure point that simply doesn't exist with a standard camera. And when it goes wrong, it can ruin a shot completely. Okay, let's talk about what happens after you finish recording, because this is where things can get heavy. 360-degree footage produces huge files. It's not surprising when you think about it. You're not recording a single frame, you're recording two high-resolution video streams covering an entire sphere, often at high bit rates. So even short clips can turn into gigabytes in size. A few minutes of footage, you're already dealing with the size of files that might cover a 20-minute 4K video. Now scale that up. A full filming session with something like the Antigravity A1 or the DJI Avata 360, you can fill a memory card, a 256 gigabyte memory card, a lot quicker than you were expecting to do so. And it doesn't stop there, because once you bring your footage into your system, transfers take longer, backups take longer, everything just becomes heavier to manage. You're not just shooting more, you're handling more at every stage of the process of producing your final video. And if you're not prepared for that, it can catch you out quickly. You might run out of storage mid-shoot. You haven't brought enough SD cards with you. So what do? You decide, well, I haven't got the shot I wanted yet. I'm going to have to delete some of the shots that I took earlier. You know, that's not a great way of doing it, is it? Which means that you're not just dealing with big files. You're constantly managing them instead of enjoying filming. It isn't just a storage issue, it affects how you shoot. If you're spending your time worrying about whether you've got enough space left on your SD card to record the footage, then you're not really concentrating on capturing the footage that's going to be in your final production. So the trade-off this time is that you're capturing everything at one time, but the files are absolutely huge in size. Now, this is another part where people seriously hit a wall, because this isn't obvious until you actually try to work with 360-degree footage. And if you've never done it before and you're not prepared for this, it's going to stop you right in your tracks. On paper, it's just video files. You've edited videos before, you drag and drop them in, you cut them and you wiggle them about until you've got a nice wee video and away you go, right? No, it's not the same with 360-degree footage. In reality, it's some of the heaviest footage that you can throw at a system, a computer system, an editing system. The moment you drop 360-degree footage into your editor, everything slows down. Playback stutters, scrubbing becomes laggy. Simple actions like trimming a clip can take a lot longer than they should. And that's on a decent machine. What if your system isn't up to it? It becomes borderline unusable. But look at what you're actually doing during a 360-degree edit. You're decoding high-resolution footage. You're stitching, sometimes in real time. You're reframing. You're keyframing movement of the camera, because the camera doesn't move when you're filming. You have to move it later on in post. That's asking an awful lot from your CPU and your GPU and your memory of your system all at the same time. So without a lot of power, your workflow breaks down. So what do people end up doing that don't have a powerhouse editor to work with? They make really low quality videos from the 360-degree footage. Or they'll create some footage, they'll wait for it to render to see what it looks like, and if it doesn't look all that good, they'll have to redo it. That just slows down your whole production time. So the reality that a lot of people don't factor in is that you're not just buying a camera, it can turn into a much bigger investment than you expected. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, aye, but I still want one. And that's fair enough, but this is where things start to get proper difficult. You're potentially committing to upgrading your entire editing system, because if your hardware can't keep up, you're not editing efficiently, and I'm telling you now, you will not be enjoying it, that's for sure. The trade-off again is that you get the full 360 capture, but you need serious computing power just to handle what you've created. For context, I edit all of my 360-degree videos on a Mac Studio that I fully spec'd out and paid £3,500 for. Now, I was previously editing my 360-degree videos on an M2 MacBook Pro, and although it could handle it, it was taking me days and days and days just to do the basics, and it would sometimes take me an entire week to create one 20-minute video. I had to upgrade to a really powerful system just to cut that time down. Now this is where everything starts to stack up, because editing 360-degree footage isn't the same as just editing a video. It's a full workflow, and every step adds a lot of time. First, you've got to get the footage from the card onto your system. And I've already said, this isn't quick. It doesn't just happen like that. The files are huge. It takes a lot of time to transfer. Then, depending on the camera, you might need to stitch the footage before you even start editing, or you're relying on software to do it in the background, which slows everything down. Then you've got to reframe. This is where you turn that 360-degree sphere into a normal video that you can see on your screen. This isn't just dragging a clip onto a timeline. You are choosing the angle, setting keyframes, controlling movement of the camera that you haven't moved while you were flying, adjusting the framing over time. Every single shot becomes a process. If you've got 20 shots in your final video, that's 20 individual processes that you have to do all of these steps with. Then, after you've done all that, that's when you can move into the actual edit, cutting, pasting, building the story, which now takes a lot longer because every clip that you are putting into that final edit has already had a lot of your time spent working on it, reframing it, and all of that stuff that you've had to do with each individual shot. So what sounds simple on the surface, just film everything and worry about it later, becomes a multi-stage pipeline that takes significantly longer than just your standard video that you've been used to editing in a couple of hours. The key point is this: All of these steps aren't optional, and there's no shortcut. You don't get to skip them. If you want a good result, you have to go through the full process every time with every shot. The trade-off is you gain flexibility at the point of capture, but you lose speed and simplicity everywhere else. Now this is where it really starts to hit, because even once you understand that convoluted workflow, you'll still underestimate how long everything is going to take. On a normal video, you cut your clips, you build your story, and you maybe add a bit of polish, transitions, LUTs, fade in, fade out. With 360 footage, that's not where you start. You've already spent time stitching, reframing, setting keyframes. That's when you can then begin the edit. So every clip that you have done all of these steps with, you can drop into your timeline. That's already cost you a lot of time to do. You can drop them into your timeline and start your actual edit of your video. So what should have been a quick edit can turn into hours, days, weeks even. People are caught out because on paper, and what other people may have told you is, it's 360 video, capture everything, you can edit it easy later. Not so easy, because in reality, you've moved the entire workload into the edit and multiplied it. So editing takes significantly longer than you expect, especially if you want it to look good. And if you are producing content to upload regularly, then time is really, really precious. Now we're up at section 8 here, okay? So there's 10 sections to this. Section 8, this is another area where a lot of people fall off, because this isn't beginner friendly. Like on a normal video, good results come down to composition, timing, basic editing. But with 360 footage, that's not enough, because you're not just editing, you're actually creating the shot after it's been filmed. And that requires a different level of skill, because you need to understand how to frame a shot from a 360 sphere. What shot am I going to take? You have to understand that. You have to understand how to move the camera within that edit in a way that feels natural. You have to understand how to guide the viewer's attention within your edit. If you get it wrong, and the footage can feel random, disorienting, or just flat and uninteresting. And then you've got to add in keyframing. So you're not just choosing an angle, you're animating the camera, you're moving the camera over time after the flight has happened. So you need to control the speed that you move that camera, the direction that you move the camera in, and the smoothness of the movement of that camera. Because if you move it too fast, it'll feel chaotic. If you move it too slow, it'll feel dull. If you move it in the wrong direction, the viewer won't know where they're supposed to be looking, and they'll lose focus. With a normal camera, you make that decision at the time you're flying. Where do I want my viewer to look? I want them to look there, so I'll point the camera there. With a 360 degree video or footage, all you're doing is deferring that decision about where they look until much later. That requires a higher skill ceiling. And it shows, because when 360 degree footage is done well, it looks cinematic and intentional. But when it's not done well, it looks rubbish. Okay, section 9. We're almost at the end here. Just 2 more to go. Here's where the biggest misconception sits. People think that filming with a 360 degree camera means that you don't have to think about the shot while filming, because you're capturing everything. But all you've really done is delay the decision to later, because at some point you still have to choose where the viewer is going to be looking, what the focus is, how the shot moves, and that's actually directing, not just shooting a video. The difference here is, instead of directing at the time of your shot, your flight, instead of reacting in the moment while filming, You're making these decisions later, clip by clip. And that sounds like freedom, but it's not. It's pressure, trust me. Every single shot becomes a series of questions. Where should this be framed? When should I move the view? What should the viewer be looking at right now? Get it wrong, and the whole thing can feel random. The other issue is that when you're out in the field filming, you have an instinct about, oh, there's a good thing there, I can capture that. Oh, look, there's a good thing there, I can capture that. When you're sitting trying to do that at home, maybe a couple of days later, you don't have that same instinct. You're reconstructing that what you did later on without the same clarity that you may have had while you were out there. And that can make the process for a lot of people harder instead of easier. Okay, here's the final section. After all the effort of capturing everything, managing huge files, working through a slow and complex edit, carefully reframing every shot, if you then want to add in things like a voiceover, music, sound effects, transitions, B-roll, fade-ins, fade-outs, that's a whole other layer. You'll need to export your reframed footage, 360 footage, convert it into a format that your standard video editor can handle properly, import it into that editor, then build your edit with your audio, your cuts, your overlays, etc. Render it again and export the final version, all of which adds a lot of time onto what's already a heavy workflow. And here comes the final hit, the straw that can break the camel's back. If you are going to upload that final video to a platform like, for example, YouTube, when it's uploaded, YouTube will highly compress it. And 360 derived footage does not handle compression well, because it's already lost detail during the reframing and editing process. So when that compression comes in from YouTube, for example, it strips out even more. Fine textures disappear, edges soften, distant detail turns to mush. So that 8K footage that you started with, by the time your viewer sees it, it could look as bad as 480, 720, 1080 at the best. And the most frustrating thing is, there's nothing you can do about it. You can export at higher bit rates, you can use the best settings available, but once it hits the platform, it gets compressed anyway. So after everything you've put in, you don't get the quality back out. That's the last trade-off. You get the flexibility, the coverage, the creative options, but the final video that your audience sees is still limited in quality, and often it's a lot softer than you expected, and certainly a lot softer than what you'd hoped for. So in conclusion, 360 footage, especially from something like the Antigravity A1 or the DJI Avata 360, isn't the shortcut and the easy method of filming that it's often made out to be by the companies themselves and by other creators who may have been sponsored by the companies. Yes, you get total freedom. Yes, you capture everything. But look at what it actually costs you to make that video. You get lower real-world image quality, weak performance outside of optimal lighting conditions, stitching risks that you can't fix, huge files, demanding and expensive hardware to edit all of that on, a slower multi-stage workflow to produce the final video with much longer edit times. There's a much higher skill requirement to do all of this, and you have to take on full responsibility for directing the video in post, which may be days after you've actually done the filming. And then the final hit, when you upload it, the video gets compressed by the platform. That's the full picture. Now, none of this means it's bad. It just means it's not what most people think or what most people have been led to believe by other people, maybe creators who might be sponsored by some of the companies that are trying to sell you this equipment. My intention here was just to give you some more information, give you the reality of what it takes to actually create a video from a 360-degree camera, because it's not as simple as people have been making out. So I know this has been a hard slog, it's been a hard video to watch all the way through, and I'm quite sure that no one has watched it all the way to this point. But if you did, if you're still with me, thanks very much. I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end, if you did. If you did, can you give me a wee thumbs up and comment and hype the video, share it, and I'll go and have a wee lie down now and see if I can recover from this long video. Thanks again for watching. Cheerio the now.